What if the person you thought was beneath you turned out to be the one testing your character all along? What if kindness to a stranger wasn't just kindness, but the key to your entire future? The rain hammered against the cracked windows of the servants' quarters at the Okonkwo estate in Lagos. Chioma pressed her thin blanket closer to her chest, trying to block out the cold seeping through the walls. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. The other housemates had taken the leftover rice from the kitchen, and by the time Chioma finished scrubbing the marble floors of the main house, there was nothing left but dirty dishes and their laughter echoing from their rooms. She was 24 years old, but her hands looked 40. Cracked. Calloused. Stained with bleach. Her mother back in Enugu was sick, lying in a clinic bed that cost 12,000 naira per day. Chioma sent every kobo she earned, keeping only enough for one meal. Sometimes not even that. The estate belonged to the Okonkwo family, one of the wealthiest families in West Africa. Mrs. Okonkwo, a woman with a sharp tongue and sharper heels, ran the household like a military general. She had 15 staff members, but Chioma was her favorite target. Too slow. Too clumsy. Too poor. Every morning, Mrs. Okonkwo reminded Chioma of her place. But there was someone else in the house. A man. Quiet. Almost invisible. His name was Emeka, and he worked as a gardener and handyman. He lived in the boys' quarters, a small concrete room near the back gate. Emeka was lean, dark-skinned, with rough hands and eyes that seemed too intelligent for a man pulling weeds. He wore the same faded blue shirt and torn jeans every day. He smelled like grass and engine oil. The other workers ignored him. Mrs. Okonkwo barely acknowledged him. But Chioma noticed him. Because he noticed her. One evening, after a particularly brutal day, Chioma sat on the back steps of the kitchen, staring at her swollen feet. Mrs. Okonkwo had thrown a plate of food at her earlier because the jollof rice was too salty. The ceramic had shattered against the wall, and Chioma had spent an hour picking shards from the floor while the entire kitchen staff watched in silence. Emeka appeared from the shadows, holding a small bundle wrapped in brown paper. He said nothing. Just placed it beside her and walked away. Chioma unwrapped it. Inside was a warm meat pie and a bottle of Coke. Her throat tightened. She hadn't cried in months, but that night, she almost did. The next morning, Mrs. Okonkwo summoned Chioma to the main parlor. Chioma's heart sank. Summons to the parlor never meant anything good. She entered the massive room, her bare feet silent on the cold marble. Mrs. Okonkwo sat on a leather sofa, flanked by her two daughters, Ngozi and Adiz. Both women were in their 30s, draped in designer clothes, their faces painted with makeup that cost more than Chioma's yearly salary. Mrs. Okonkwo's eyes were ice. Chioma, you've been stealing. Chioma froze. Ma! Don't play dumb with me. My gold bracelet is missing. The one I left on my dresser yesterday. Chioma's mouth went dry. Ma, I didn't take anything. I swear. Ngozi laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. Of course you took it. You people are all the same. We let you into our home, give you work, and this is how you repay us? Adiz leaned forward, her lips curled in disgust. Search her room. I bet she's already sold it. Mrs. Okonkwo stood, her heels clicking against the floor like a judge's gavel. I want my bracelet back by tonight, or I'm calling the police. And trust me, Chioma, you won't survive a night in Kirikiri. Chioma's knees buckled. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, but what was the point? Her word against theirs? She was nothing. They were everything. She turned and ran, her vision blurred with tears. She stumbled through the corridors, past the sneering faces of the other workers, and collapsed in her room. Her small bag lay open on the floor. She had 3 possessions, a faded photograph of her mother, a rosary, and a thin gold chain her father had given her before he passed. That chain was the only thing of value she owned, and it was worth maybe 5,000 naira. Nothing compared to Mrs. Okonkwo's bracelet. But she would be accused anyway. She always was. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her spiral. Emeka stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. "I heard what happened," he said quietly. Chioma wiped her face. "It doesn't matter. I'll be gone by tonight." Emeka stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Did you take it?" She looked up at him, anger flashing in her eyes. "No. I didn't. But who's going to believe me?" Emeka nodded slowly. Then he did something strange. He smiled. Not a mocking smile, but something softer. Almost sad. "I believe you." Those 3 words shattered something inside her. Chioma broke down, her body shaking with sobs. Emeka said nothing. He simply sat beside her on the floor, his presence steady and warm. When she finally calmed, he spoke again. "Let me help you." "How?" Chioma whispered. "You're just a gardener. You have no power here." Emeka's smile widened, but there was something mysterious in his eyes. "Maybe. But trust me, Chioma. This isn't over." That afternoon, Mrs. Okonkwo gathered the entire household in the courtyard. She stood on the raised stone platform near the fountain, her arms crossed, her face twisted in righteous fury. "Someone in this house is a thief," she announced, her voice echoing off the walls. "And that someone is Chioma." Chioma stood at the front of the crowd, her head bowed, her hands trembling. The other workers whispered behind her. "Guilty. Obviously guilty. Look at her. So poor. So desperate." But then Emeka stepped forward. "Excuse me, madam." Mrs. Okonkwo's eyes snapped to him, her expression one of shock and irritation. "What do you want, gardener?" Emeka's voice was calm, measured. "I found your bracelet." The courtyard fell silent. Mrs. Okonkwo's face paled. "What?" Emeka pulled something from his pocket and held it up. The gold bracelet glinted in the sunlight. It was under the couch in the parlor. It must have fallen. Mrs. Okonkwo snatched the bracelet from his hand, her face flushing red. She examined it, her jaw tight. It was hers. No doubt. She looked at Chioma, then at Emeka, then back at the bracelet. For a moment, Chioma thought she might apologize. But Mrs. Okonkwo simply turned on her heel and walked back into the house without a word. Ngozi and Adis followed, their faces tight with embarrassment. The crowd dispersed, leaving Chioma standing alone with Emeka. She stared at him, her chest heaving. "Where did you really find it?" Emeka's eyes twinkled. "Under the couch. Just like I said." But Chioma knew better. She had cleaned that parlor yesterday. There had been nothing under that couch. That night, Chioma couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the day in her mind. Emeka's calm voice. His steady hands. The way Mrs. Okonkwo had looked at him, like she'd seen a ghost. Something wasn't right. Something about Emeka didn't fit. He was too calm. Too confident. Too different. The next morning, Chioma found Emeka in the garden, trimming the hedges. She approached him cautiously. "Why did you help me?" Emeka didn't look up. "Because you needed help." "But why me? You don't even know me." Emeka paused, setting down his shears. He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I know more than you think, Chioma." Her heart raced. "What does that mean?" Before Emeka could answer, a black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. The car was sleek, expensive, and completely out of place in the servants' area. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, his face obscured by sunglasses. He walked directly toward Emeka. Chioma's breath caught. The man stopped in front of Emeka and bowed. "Sir, your presence is requested at headquarters. There's an urgent matter." "Sir?" Chioma's mind spun. "Sir?" She looked at Emeka, her mouth open. Emeka sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I was hoping to wait a little longer. The man in the suit glanced at Chioma, then back at Emeka. Shall I? No, Emeka said firmly. She stays. Chioma's voice was barely a whisper. Who are you? Emeka removed his gardening gloves slowly, deliberately. Then he met her eyes. My real name is Emeka Ndiaya. I'm the CEO of Ndiaya Enterprises. Net worth? About $3 billion. The world tilted. Chioma stumbled back, her hand gripping the garden wall for support. What? Emeka's expression softened. I've been here for 3 months, Chioma. Living as a gardener. Watching. Learning. Testing. Testing? Her voice cracked. Testing what? People, Emeka said simply. I wanted to see how people treated someone they thought was beneath them. I wanted to see who had a real heart. And you, Chioma, you're the only person in this house who ever treated me like a human being. Chioma shook her head, tears streaming down her face. This is insane. You're lying. Emeka pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. It displayed a news feed. The headline read, Billionaire CEO Emeka Ndiaya missing for 3 months, shareholders in panic. Below it was a photograph. The same face. The same eyes. But in the photo, Emeka wore a designer suit, his hair neatly trimmed, his smile confident and powerful. Chioma's legs gave out. She sank to the ground, her mind racing. Emeka knelt beside her. I'm sorry I lied. But I needed to know the truth. And now I do. Before Chioma could respond, Mrs. Okonkwo's shrill voice cut through the air. What is going on here? Mrs. Okonkwo stormed into the garden, her face twisted in fury. She saw the man in the suit, the Mercedes, and Emeka kneeling beside Chioma. Her eyes narrowed. Emeka, what is the meaning of this? Who is this man? And why is there a car in my driveway? Emeka stood slowly, brushing the dirt from his jeans. Your driveway, Mrs. Okonkwo? He smiled, but it was cold. Actually, I need to correct you. This estate? It doesn't belong to your family anymore. Mrs. Okonkwo's face went white. What are you talking about? The man in the suit stepped forward, pulling a folder from his briefcase. Mrs. Okonkwo, allow me to introduce myself. I am Mr. Chukwu, legal counsel for Ndiaya Enterprises. 3 months ago, my client, Mr. Emeka Ndiaya, purchased this property from your husband, Mr. Okonkwo, who was facing bankruptcy due to his gambling debts. The sale was finalized 2 weeks ago. You've been living on Mr. Ndiaya's property since then. Mrs. Okonkwo staggered, gripping the garden bench for support. No. No, that's impossible. My husband wouldn't. Your husband had no choice, Mr. Chukwu interrupted. He owed $17 million to multiple creditors. Mr. Ndiaya bought his debts and offered him a deal: sell the estate, or face criminal prosecution. Ngozi and Adiz appeared in the doorway, their faces pale. Mama, what's happening? Ngozi whispered. Emeka turned to them, his expression unreadable. What's happening is that you're being evicted. All of you. You have 24 hours to pack your belongings and leave. Adiz's voice was shrill. You can't do this. This is our home. Was your home, Emeka corrected. And considering how you treated your staff, I'd say you're lucky I'm giving you a full day. Mrs. Okonkwo's legs buckled. She fell to her knees, her pride shattered. Please. Please, we have nowhere to go. Emeka looked down at her, his face hard. Neither did Chioma. But that didn't stop you from threatening to throw her in prison for something she didn't do. Mrs. Okonkwo opened her mouth, but no words came out. Emeka turned to Chioma, extending his hand. Come with me. Chioma stared at his hand, her mind spinning. Where? Home, Emeka said softly. Your real home. Chioma took his hand, her fingers trembling. Emeka led her to the Mercedes, and as they drove away, Chioma looked back at the estate. Mrs. Okonkwo was still on her knees, her daughters clinging to her, their faces streaked with tears. The other workers stood in the courtyard, their expressions a mix of shock and vindication. The car stopped at a private hospital in Ikoyi. Emeka led Chioma inside, through the pristine white corridors, to a private room on the third floor. Chioma's breath caught. Her mother lay in the bed, hooked up to monitors, her face peaceful. A doctor stood beside her, making notes on a clipboard. The doctor looked up and smiled. Miss Chioma, your mother's surgery was successful. The cancer is gone. She'll make a full recovery. Chioma's knees buckled. Emeka caught her, holding her steady. How? She whispered. I paid for it, Emeka said simply. 3 weeks ago. I also cleared all her medical debts. Chioma turned to him, tears streaming down her face. Why? Why would you do this? Emeka's expression softened. Because you gave me a meat pie when I was hungry. Because you smiled at me when everyone else looked through me. Because you saw me as a person, not a servant. That's rare, Chioma. Rarer than you know. Chioma broke down, sobbing into his chest. Emeka held her, his hand gently stroking her hair. You don't owe me anything, he whispered. But I'd like to offer you something. A job. A real job. At my company. With a real salary. Chioma pulled back, her eyes wide. What kind of job? Executive assistant, Emeka said. You're smart, hardworking, and loyal. That's all I need. Chioma laughed through her tears. I don't even have a degree. Neither did I when I started, Emeka said with a grin. I'll sponsor your education. Everything. Full ride. Chioma couldn't speak. She could only nod, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. 6 months passed. Chioma threw herself into her new role with a ferocity that surprised even Emeka. She attended night classes at the University of Lagos, studying business administration. During the day, she worked at Ndiaya Enterprises, learning the ins and outs of corporate operations. Emeka was patient, guiding her through complex negotiations, teaching her how to read financial statements, how to command a room. Chioma absorbed everything like a sponge. But something else was growing between them. Something neither of them wanted to name. It started with small gestures. Emeka bringing her coffee during late nights. Chioma leaving sticky notes with jokes on his desk. Their eyes meeting across crowded conference rooms, holding just a moment too long. One evening, after a particularly grueling board meeting, Emeka found Chioma on the rooftop terrace of the office building. She stood at the railing, staring out at the glittering Lagos skyline. Emeka approached quietly, standing beside her. You did well today, he said. Chioma smiled. I almost cried when Mr. Adeyemi asked about the quarterly projections. But you didn't, Emeka pointed out. You held your ground. That takes strength. Chioma turned to him, her expression serious. I need to ask you something. Anything. Why did you really go undercover? Was it just about testing people? Emeka was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed, leaning against the railing. 5 years ago, I was engaged. Her name was Amaka. She was beautiful, charming, and came from a wealthy family. I thought she loved me. But one day, I overheard her talking to her friends. She said she was only marrying me for my money. That I was boring, but rich enough to overlook it. His voice was flat, emotionless. I called off the wedding. And I realized I'd never know if someone truly loved me for who I was, or for what I had. Chioma's heart ached. So you became a gardener. I became invisible, Emeka corrected. And in that invisibility, I saw the truth. Most people are cruel to those they perceive as lesser. But you, Chioma, you were kind. Even when you had nothing, you shared what little you had. Chioma's eyes filled with tears. I didn't do it for a reward. I know, Emeka said softly. He turned to face her, his hand reaching up to cup her cheek. That's why I'm in love with you. Chioma's breath hitched. Emeka. You don't have to say anything, Emeka whispered. I just needed you to know. But Chioma shook her head, a smile breaking across her face. I love you too. I think I have since the night you gave me that meat pie. Emeka laughed, pulling her into his arms. They stood there, wrapped in each other, the city lights twinkling below them like stars. But their happiness was short-lived. 2 weeks later, Chioma arrived at the office to find it in chaos. Security guards rushed through the halls. Executives whispered in tight clusters. Chioma grabbed one of the assistants. What's going on? The assistant's face was pale. It's Mr. Ndiaye. Someone's filed a lawsuit. They're claiming he defrauded them out of millions. The board is meeting right now. Chioma's blood ran cold. She sprinted to the executive boardroom, bursting through the doors. Emeka stood at the head of the table, his face tight with anger. Across from him sat a woman Chioma recognized immediately. Amaka. Emeka's ex-fiancée. Amaka looked up as Chioma entered, her lips curling into a smirk. Well. The maid. Chioma's fists clenched. What are you doing here? Amaka stood, smoothing her designer dress. I'm here to take back what's mine. You see, Emeka and I were engaged. During that time, I invested $2 million into his company. He promised me a 50% stake. But when we broke up, he refused to honor that agreement. So I'm suing. Emeka's voice was ice. That's a lie. You never invested a kobo. And I have the bank records to prove it. Amaka laughed. Do you? Because I have documents. Signed. Notarized. And my lawyer is very, very good. One of the board members cleared his throat. Mr. Ndiaye, if these allegations are true, this could destroy the company. We need to settle. I won't settle for a lie, Emeka snapped. Amaka's smile widened. Then I'll see you in court. And when I win, I'll take everything. Your company. Your reputation. Your precious little maid. She looked directly at Chioma. Enjoy him while you can, sweetheart. He'll be bankrupt by Christmas. Amaka turned and walked out, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Emeka sank into his chair, his head in his hands. Chioma rushed to his side. We'll fight this. We'll prove she's lying. Emeka looked up at her, his eyes filled with exhaustion. What if we can't? What if she really does have documents? I don't even remember signing anything. Chioma's mind raced. She thought back to everything Emeka had told her about Amaka. And then it hit her. Emeka, you said you overheard her talking to her friends. Did you record it? Emeka blinked. What? The conversation. The one where she said she was only marrying you for money. Did you record it? Emeka's eyes widened. I did. On my phone. But that was 5 years ago. I don't even know if I still have it. Chioma grabbed his hand. We need to find that recording. Now. They spent the next 3 days tearing through Emeka's digital archives. Old phones. Hard drives. Cloud backups. Chioma barely slept, fueled by coffee and sheer determination. And then, on the 4th day, she found it. A voice memo. Dated 5 years ago. Chioma pressed play. Amaka's voice filled the room, clear and damning. He's boring as hell, but $3 billion? I can pretend for a few years. Amicus stared at the phone, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled. Chioma, you're a genius. The court hearing was held 2 weeks later. Amaka arrived in a white suit, flanked by her high-priced legal team. She looked confident, victorious. But when Amika's lawyer played the recording, her face drained of color. The judge listened in silence. Then he turned to Amaka. Miss Amaka, you are hereby found guilty of fraud and perjury. Your lawsuit is dismissed, and you will pay Mr. NDI $3 million in damages. Case closed. Amaka's lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a glare. Amaka staggered out of the courtroom, her reputation in ruins. Amika turned to Chioma, pulling her into his arms. Thank you. Chioma grinned. We make a good team. 3 months later, Amika proposed. Not in a fancy restaurant. Not with a grand gesture. But in the small garden behind his house, the same garden where he'd given her that meat pie all those months ago. He knelt in the dirt, holding a simple gold ring. Chioma, will you marry me? Chioma laughed, tears streaming down her face. Yes. 1,000,000 times yes. Their wedding was small. Intimate. Chioma's mother, now fully recovered, sat in the front row, beaming. Amika's closest friends and colleagues filled the seats. But the most surprising guest was Mrs. Okonkwo. She approached Chioma before the ceremony, her face pale and humble. I owe you an apology. Chioma's jaw tightened. Yes. You do. Mrs. Okonkwo looked down at her hands. I was cruel. Unjust. And I have no excuse. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. Chioma studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Apology accepted. But I won't forget. Mrs. Okonkwo nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. I understand. As Chioma walked down the aisle, her hand in Amika's, she realized something. Her life hadn't changed because of money. It had changed because of kindness. One act of kindness had set off a chain reaction that had saved her mother, given her an education, and brought her the love of her life. This story teaches us that character is revealed not in how we treat those above us, but in how we treat those we believe are beneath us. Chioma's kindness to a gardener changed her life because that gardener saw her true heart. In a world obsessed with status and wealth, never underestimate the power of treating every person with dignity and respect. You never know who's watching. And you never know whose life you might change, including your own. We hope you enjoyed this powerful story. Share your thoughts in the comments, give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already, and subscribe so you won't miss more captivating stories like this one.